Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get the meeting started. We're going to start with the invocation from Troy Large from the Valley Christian Center.
Thank you for having us today. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening, Lord, and we thank you for this great city of Los Banos. We thank you, Lord, for each city council member and our mayor and vice mayor and all those, Father, that you have placed over us today. Lord, we ask tonight, Father, that you give them the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding, and conviction tonight, Father, to be able to make the decisions on behalf of this city. I ask tonight, Lord, that you would bless our police force and our firemen. And I ask tonight, Lord, that you'll cause us to come into unity, Father. Your word said, united we stand and divided we fall. I ask your blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, and we'll call the meeting to order at 6:02. We'll ask Chief Breezy for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Miss Melanie. Present. Here. We have a quorum. We get a motion for the consideration of the approval of the agenda. Jones? Second? Mr. Lamas?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Noes? Thank you. Consent agenda has been approved. Excuse me, the approval of the agenda. We'll now move on to the presentations, the proclamation, and I'll come down to the bottom side here. Do we have a Kathy Mendoza here? Okay, this is a proclamation recognizing the 75th anniversary of Society for Disabilities. Whereas for 75 years, the Society for Disabilities has been dedicated to enhancing the quality of life and self-sufficiency for people with disabilities in Stanislaus County and beyond. And whereas Society for Disabilities operates the largest loan closet in our area, loaning adaptive mobility and medical equipment to those in need. And whereas Society for Disabilities also offers recreational programs for people with disabilities, including winter skiing, water skiing, bike camps, day on the farm, bowling, and soon golfing and soccer. Sign language classes are also offered. And whereas Society for Disabilities is an independent, nonprofit entity where funding comes solely from private resources. Without the support from the community, the important work done by the Society would be impossible. Whereas the Society for Disabilities is proud to say that for 75 years, the organization has provided services and programs that are essential to good health, independence, and the well-being of the clients, their caregivers, and their families. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the mayor and the city council members of the city of Los Banos do hereby congratulate the Society for Disabilities on the 75th anniversary and thank them for their unique services and resources they provide for a very special, vulnerable populations in our community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed the seal of the city of Los Banos, the 15th day of June, 2022.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you for your time.
Next, we're going to be handing out certificate of recognition to Mr. Ivan Mendez. Certificate of recognition is presented to Ivan Mendez, Sergeant, Los Banos Police Department, in recognition of your outstanding performance and dedicated service to the city of Los Banos and for being named Employee of the Month for May 2022. We appreciate all the hard work that you put forth for this city.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next certificate of recognition will be for Gilbert Sanchez. Is Gilbert? For Gilbert Sanchez, Public Safety Custodian, Los Banos Police Department, in recognition of your outstanding performance and dedicated service to the city of Los Banos, and for being named as the 2021 Support Staff Employee of the Year by the Los Banos Police Department. We thank Mr. Sanchez for all the hard work he's put forth. Do we have Elizabeth Martinez? Okay. This certificate of recognition presented to Elizabeth Martinez, a Public Safety Dispatcher, Los Banos Police Department, in recognition of your outstanding performance and dedicated service to the city of Los Banos and for being named as the 2021 Public Safety Dispatcher of the Year by the Los Banos Police Department. We thank Ms. Martinez for her excellent hard work. All right, next we'll move on to the public forum. Members of the public may address the city council members on any item of the public interest that is within the jurisdiction of the city council. Includes agenda and non-agenda items. No action will be taken on non-agenda items. Speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Detailed guidelines are posted on the council chamber's informational table. When you come up to the podium, please state your name and the city of residence. And if I can remind all those in the council chambers to either turn off their cell phones or put them on silent. Do we have anybody?
Mine's going to be quick. Good evening. My name is Maria Salinas, and I live at the Rancho Los Baños Mobile Home Park. And I am here again tonight, hoping that we can get some compassion from you. Since April, we have been present at your meetings to express our very valid concerns due to the homeless encampment that is located on the other side of our fence. We have endured over 2 years of noise, filth, theft, destruction, fear, danger, and the list goes on and on. Last week, a helicopter was flying very low right over the homeless encampment and the south side of the mobile home park, which is where my mobile home is located. I figured they were looking for a homeless person, and I became concerned, thinking that the person that they were looking for must have committed a serious crime. I mean, why else would they be using a helicopter? I immediately thought, is the person armed? Maybe the person is hiding in the mobile home park. So that's very alarming. Anyway, as soon as the helicopter left, there was a guy yelling and cussing and talking to himself very loud. It sounded like he was high on drugs, something. And he was right over the fence that's close to the Home Depot, which is a couple of feet from my mobile home. Tonight, I'm looking forward to hearing Ms. Lewis's comments regarding the homeless encampment, and I thank her for addressing the matter, and hopefully it will be good news for our group. And to end on a positive note, I haven't heard the drummer boy, and it has been a blessing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Chandra Lewis. I am the assistant manager at Rancho Los Banos Mobile Home Park, and I live here in Los Banos. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. We are here again to make a plea to move the homeless away from our community, so we do not have to endure the unlawfulness that is allowed in our community by fearing them and what has happened. We endure fires, theft, use needles where our children can find them. We do have a glimmer of hope. Thank you, City Councilwoman Lewis. We read your article and we appreciate the hope. We also appreciate that we are on the agenda. And we hope it leads to being back on the agenda, not to be just an item with no action, but to be back on the agenda with action to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Klein, and I actually live in Riverbank, California, which is near Modesto. So you might wonder why I'm attending your council meeting this evening. I'm going to give you a little bit of context. I've wrote my notes. I've made a copy for each of you that I'll hand out after. I'm here today to speak about the Los Banos Animal Shelter. For context, I've been in animal welfare for nearly a decade. I've done rescue work at shelters throughout Northern California, including canine evaluations, placement, transport logistics with dozens of 501c3 nonprofit rescue groups throughout the states of California, Oregon, and Washington. I've provided operational recommendations based on national sheltering standards and attend numerous board meetings, citizens advisory committees, and city council meetings like I am this evening. I've been now coming to the Los Banos shelter for over a year, twice a week, 3 hours round trip, on average, to evaluate, collaborate, and find placement for the shelter's animals. With my partner, Jennifer Pimlott, who cannot be here tonight, we have successfully exited over 300 animals that would have been otherwise euthanized in this last year. In fact, prior, your AC indicated they were putting down, on average, 3 dogs per week. Let me repeat that. 3 dogs were being needlessly euthanized on average per week at the shelter. The primary reason I was given was that nobody wanted them. There were and are, in fact, reasons that those dogs did not move. They did move, but it wasn't because they weren't wanted. My time is limited tonight, so of course my comments will be abbreviated. The shelter operates from 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, when most of us, or all of you, or your community, are at work, making it nearly impossible to get to the shelter during those hours, especially those residents who may work over the hill. That needs to change. The community is the shelter, and the shelter is the community. The shelter is not even open on the weekends. The shelter is in desperate need of resources, and I know that you're starting to realize that because it's been put on the agenda and a sliver on the budget for this year. I will save those comments for later if I'm able to speak during the budget time, but what I do want to say is the shelter is dilapidated. The front half of the office building has caution tape around it and has for many months. The inside, quite frankly, is a mess. I'm going to propose tonight a task force, a citizens advisory committee to be created, comprised of various members such as local rescue, veterinarian, public citizens, shelter staff, myself, and I graciously ask that you, Councilmember Lewis, lead our group. The reason being, I heard your comments at the last meeting. I could tell that you cared. You had questions, you were concerned. I'd also like to address Member Lamas regarding your experience adopting an animal. Thank you. You had indicated how they came to your house and checked your fence. And with all due respect, sir, I can tell you that was probably over 3 years ago because that group of volunteers no longer sits at the shelter and they've disbanded. To wrap up, I've met with Sergeant Mendez. Again, congratulations, Ivan, on your well-deserved award tonight. And Commander Reyna regarding the shelter back in March. Presented numerous ideas, and again, I can provide those to you. Suffice to say, pretty much met with non-interest. Ideas for efficiencies, providing funding for the shelter, and providing an opportunity for the community. So in closing, I do want to thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to make myself available to the City Council, as well as anybody here in the audience, or anybody watching on YouTube tonight. I support AC Martin and AC Estrada. I work with them all the time, as you can imagine. I'm committed to the animals here in Los Banos. But as city leaders, we've got to do something. Your town is no longer a cow town. It's grown to 50,000 residents. And, well, our animals and our people deserve more. Thank you. And I'll, if I may, pass these out, or if you could, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Klein.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Suzanne Cardoso, and I was born and raised here in Los Banos, which is where I currently reside. I am here today to speak in regards to the topic of the animal shelter. In 2014, I adopted a kitten from there. The very first time I went back there was May 9th of this year. And from what I remember, nothing has changed aside from the fact that there are now little to no volunteers. That is about 8 years with zero change, yet our population has increased by roughly 8 to 10,000. We are now at a time where more houses are being built, which means the number of strays and abandoned animals is only going to increase. So where does that leave the ones that are currently in the shelter, who already have very little time to be adopted, reclaimed, or sent to rescue? These animals did nothing wrong, yet they are the ones who are suffering, suffer. Their so-called owners walk away freely without any pain, suffering, or possibility of euthanasia when they are the ones who did the animals wrong. With all that being said, our shelter is way overdue for a major upgrade, or even better, a completely new animal shelter. I was informed by one of our local city council members that the shelter has a proposed amount of $1 million. Meanwhile, there are $24 million to build a completely new police station. I completely understand that our police station is way overdue for a new building, but so is our animal shelter. The only difference is these animals do not have a voice to speak up for what they deserve. So I will be their voice. I will continue to speak up for these animals and what they deserve, which is far more than what they are getting. There are so many changes that need to be made in our town in regards to animals, cheaper spay-neuter, requiring animals to be microchipped, and at least another animal control officer, and the list goes on. I understand that these things cannot be fixed all at once, but there are some major changes that need to be made. These helpless animals have no voice and no way to be heard. They deserve way better than 10 days to find someone to save them. Thank you. And I also do want to add that I did start a petition that has received roughly 800 signatures. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cardozo. Do we have anyone else in the public that would like to speak? And we move over to the city clerk and ask if she's received any comments by email.
I have received one comment. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Sandra Bonetti of Los Banos, submitting these comments on behalf of Peninsula Clean Energy. I apologize for not being present before you this evening, but I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update regarding Peninsula Clean Energy's e-bikes for everyone program. This program provides recipients up to $1,000 off the purchase price of an electric bike, also known as an e-bike, for income qualifying City of Los Banos residents to help make e-bikes more affordable. The e-bikes for everyone program opened May 16th and closed on June 5th. As of June 5th, we received 37 qualified applications from Los Banos residents, and on June 6th, a total of 28 Los Banos residents were awarded through a lottery. Those recipients have up to 30 days from the date of award to purchase the new e-bikes. Thank you to those who applied for this program, and best wishes for fun and adventure to those recipients. As a reminder, Peninsula Clean Energy is a public agency that purchases energy from clean sources like solar and wind farms and passes along savings to its customers. The City of Los Banos partnered with Peninsula Clean Energy to offer clean electricity and lower rates to the community, and we began serving Los Banos in April. You can learn more about Peninsula Clean Energy's electricity generation services for Los Banos by visiting our website at pencleanenergy.com/Los-Banos. And thank you. And those are the only comments I received.
Thank you, Ms. Melanie. All right, so we will now move on to the consideration of approval of the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be voted on in one motion unless removed from the consent agenda by the city council member. And I'll ask the city clerk, Ms. Melanie, for the consent agenda.
Numbers 232902 through 233326 in the amount of $901,199.05. Minutes for the June 1st, 2022 City Council meeting. City Council Resolution Number 6512, reauthorizing remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the City of Los Banos pursuant to the provisions of AB 361. City Council Resolution Number 6513, authorizing the city manager to charge flat rate for late penalties for delinquent water, wastewater, and solid waste services through December 31st, 2022. City Council Resolution Number 6514, approving and adopting final track map number 2015-01, South Point at Regency Park Phase 8, and accompanying subdivision improvement agreement, Stonefield Home, Inc. City Council Resolution Number 6515, approving and adopting final track map number 2015-01, South Point at Regency Park Phase 9, and accompanying subdivision improvement agreement, Stonefield Home, Inc. City Council Resolution Number 6516, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget as it pertains to increasing expenditures in the fleet fund for gasoline and oil in the amount of $25,000. City Council Resolution Number 6517, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget and approving the increase in expenditures of the American Rescue Plan Act funding in the amount of $14,000 to support the purchase and installation of a fire station radio tone splitting system. And the items are to be approved as submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Melanie. I will now go through the council to see if they would like to pull. And Jones? Mr. Lamas? Ms. Lewis? All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of consent agenda. Mr. Jones?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
I have a motion by Mr. Jones. Do I have a second? Ms. Lewis? Thank you. All in favor? Aye. All right, consent agenda has approved. All right, we'll move on to the next item. Item 8, this is going to be public hearing. If you challenge the proposed action as described herein in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described herein or written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. And we'll move to the item A, public hearing to receive public comment and consideration of the appropriate limitation for the 2022-2023 fiscal year by Finance Director, Ms. Williams.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Tonight I have for you the annual appropriations limitation. The limit was imposed in order to create restrictions on the amount of government revenue in which the city can appropriate in any fiscal year. The appropriation limitation creates a restriction on the amount of revenue which may be appropriated, and the appropriation subject to limitation, which include the proceeds of tax, may not exceed this appropriation limitation. This year's appropriation limitation is $115,399,111. What that means is that we cannot generate more than that in tax revenues. What we are generating, or what the appropriation subject limitation is a little over 26 million. So as you can see, we're well under the limit by over $89 million. However, each year we must hold a public hearing and we must adopt 2 factors. The factors being the change in California per capita personal income, which is essentially the cost of living, and the second being the change in population. We can choose either the increase in population to the city or the increase in population to the county. We choose whichever is larger, and this year it happens to be the city. So tonight we're recommending that staff or that council holds a public hearing and then adopts the attached resolution, which selects the inflation and city population. And that's all I have unless anybody has any questions.
Okay. I'm going to ask the council if they have any questions to start off. Jones? Mr. Lamas? Ms. Lewis? Okay. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Do I have anybody in the? Okay, if I have nobody for the public hearing, we'll close the hearing and we'll select the we'll adopt the resolution as submitted. So I'll ask a motion to adopt resolution 6518. Councilmember Jones?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to adopt City Council Resolution number 6518 as submitted.
I have a motion by Councilmember Jones. Do I have a second? Mr. Lamas?
I'll second that.
All right. I have a second by Mr. Lamas. We'll adopt it. All in favor?
Aye.
No noes? Okay. So moved. All right. Next one, public hearing to receive public comment and consideration of the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget. And we'll go back to Ms. Finance Director, Ms. Williams.
Okay, thank you. So tonight I'm not going to bore you with all the detail. that we had at the last meeting. I'm just going to go over a quick summary of balances that are in the general fund. Please feel free to stop me at any time you have, or any questions that you have, excuse me. So the general fund budget, a summary of revenues, we are anticipating to bring in a little over 25 million in revenues in the general fund. Of this 25 million, 79% of this revenue is collected by taxes, mainly by sales tax and property tax. There are some TOT taxes in there and a few other small minor taxes. However, as you can see, the majority of our taxes are sales tax and property tax. Expenditures for the year for general fund are anticipated to be $27,446,248. Of that amount, 55% of that is made up by personnel costs, 21% is supplies and services, and the remaining 24% is capital outlay. Summary of, oh, we skipped a slide. No, we didn't. I just have them out of order. Okay, summary of expenditures for Measure H are divided by the way that the expenditure plan is set up, which a portion goes to police, dispatch, code enforcement, fire, and recreation. There is a little over $2 million budgeted for the police department, $395,000 budgeted for dispatch, $154,000 budgeted for code enforcement, $375,000 for fire, and $474,000 for recreation. A lot of this money for Measure H particularly includes for police and dispatch $1 million to help build the police station. As you can see, the slide breaks it down by personnel, supplies and services, and capital outlay. Balancing the budget. So as I mentioned, revenues for the general funds are at $25 million. Expenditures are at $27.4 million, which leaves us a fiscal year deficit of $2.4 million. This deficit includes all committed funds. It also includes Measure H. So if we back out the restricted funding, then it brings us to an operating surplus of $112,000, which means we're in the black for the year. We're taking out the capital one-time projects. We're taking out Measure H funds that are restricted and have specific expenditure plan that we can spend them on. So we do have an operating surplus, which is positive, which is something that we obviously want to have on an annual basis. That being said, we are estimated to finish the fiscal year at the 2.4 deficit, but overall, we will have a fund balance of over $20 million. So that is obviously very positive. So I know I'm going kind of fast, but we did go in a lot of detail last time. So ARPA funding, this is our temporary revenue source that we received because of COVID. We're receiving just over $9 million. We received $4.9 million this year, and we'll receive another $4.9 million in July. The breakdown for this, so in this current fiscal year, we spent $848,000 on essential worker pay, $225 in professional services, so that professional services was just to administer some of these other programs. We put $555,000 towards the Red Card program, $202,500 towards the homeless program, $36,000 towards replacing HVAC systems for health reasons, $40,000 for scoreboards at the Colorado ball fields, $100,000 for police technology. And what we're asking for in this current budget is, well, we've already passed the $627,600 for essential worker pay. We're asking for an additional $5,000 for professional services to administer the programs. If Rad Card continues on a positive note, then there's another $555,000 that would be allotted to that Rad Card program. An additional $213,844 is a carry forward for the HVAC systems. We have put pickleball courts in there to be constructed in the upcoming fiscal year for $600,000. And the animal shelter upgrade will be $1 million. Tree trimming throughout the city, we're asking for $200,000. Police technology, which is a carryover from the current fiscal year, is an additional $100,000. And then there's a couple items in there for upcoming years, which is essential worker pay and then professional services. That being said, We will have, and you just adopted a $14,000 project for the fire department, so that will come out of ARPA as well. With the projects that we plan to complete in 2022 and the projects that we are anticipating in 2023 and 2024, that will leave our fund balance in this account just a little over $4.5 million. That $4.5 million must be obligated by the end of December 31st of 2024. It doesn't have to be expended until 2026, but it does have to be obligated by 2024. So that's the summary for ARPA. Okay. The summary of expenditures for the enterprise funds, which are water, wastewater, airport, and solid waste. Water, we're expending out $8.3 million. Wastewater is $8.8 million. Airport is $420,000, and solid waste is $10 million. And we have several projects that are detailed in our capital improvement plan, which will be handed out with the budget books after the budget is adopted. So a summary, and you'll see in your staff report that there's part of the resolution is to change the salary schedule. I did mention the changes at the budget workshop, but just to review those changes, there are COLA increases built in the budget for adopted MOUs, including 2% for fire, 2% for dispatch and CSOs, and 2% for public works unit, 2.75% for police officers and police sergeants, and 3% for unrepresented employees. Also, changes that you will see on the salary schedule include removing the assistant public works director position and adding a public works operation manager in their place, and adding an engineering technician for support. We are also adding an additional position to the fleet department as a fleet mechanic. We will be removing a recreation coordinator 2 position in the recreation department and replacing that with a recreation supervisor position. And then finally, we will be adjusting the police services salary range. And those are the only changes that we have to the salary schedule. The capital improvement plan, as I just briefly mentioned, is a 5-year plan in the budget book, workbook that you have now. It is included in that book. It is a summary which includes the project cost and available funding. However, when we present the actual budget book, you will also receive a standalone capital improvement plan book that's released every year with the budget, and it includes not only the summary, but it also includes individual project descriptions for each project or equipment that will be purchased. So that's in great detail. After that brief summary, what I'm asking for tonight is for the council to conduct a public hearing and adopt Resolution 6519, adopting the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. I'm going to go through council again, ask if they have any questions. Jones? No, Adam, Mr. Lamas?
Yeah, I have a question. Ms. Williams, thank you very much for that report. Appreciate it. I had a question regarding the tree trimming. How does that coincide with our agreement with Ronnie's and their responsibility? Is that overlapping in any way? I just want to ensure that Ronnie's is being made responsible for their budget or areas of their responsibility.
So my understanding is that it does not overlap in any way, but the city manager is heading the project, so he might be able to better answer that question.
Okay.
Ms. Williams is correct. It's not overlapping anyway. And Director Non, you're on if you have any more comments in regards to his contract, but it is not overlapping in his current contract, correct?
That's correct, City Manager. The $200,000 will be on its own RFP, so all the local contractor will be able to bid on that project, and it's not part of Ronnie's current contract.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there a way to get a copy of that contract?
The Ronnie contract?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lamas. Ms. Lewis?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a statement, I think, on the contract regarding Ronnie's Landscaping is that we're operating on an extended contract. We've extended that, I think, at least 2 times since I've been here. And I understand staff is working on a new contract. And I'm hoping that, we're going to be more specific in detail about exactly what this, the city's expectation is in regards to the upcoming contract. So, basically, we're operating on an old contract that's soon to expire. That's all I have right now.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And now that we went through council, I'll open the public hearing.
I'm just curious if anybody can explain what would be in that $1 million animal shelter renovation. And has anybody ever said what it would cost to have a completely new shelter? I'm just curious about that, but it would be good to know what would be expected for that $1 million expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go over to Mr. Huron for that to see if we can answer that question. Mr. Huron?
I don't think he
Mayor Pro Tem, so that $1 million, so we're right now is trying to deploy a program to understand what that could get us. Currently, we at least planning to replace that dilapidated office building. But in addition to that, we'll take a look at, that estimated currently at about $200,000. So that's leave us about $800,000 to do other program. But we'll have an engineering firm to actually come prepare a programmatic approach to see what that can get us with that funding.
Thank you, Mr. Huron. Anybody else in the public?
I took copious notes last meeting from what you presented. Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Nancy Klein. Klein. Okay. Last month's presentation, page 57 for code enforcement, you had laid out a difference of the budget for this year of about $41,000 for the shelter. Special programs were microchips, which were actually state mandated on January 1st of this year, so we're a little behind the timetable there. Vaccines, an AC vehicle, but then again, under buildings and structure, there was the animal shelter upgrade, and I know we just kind of talked about that a little bit, and the bid documents. So I'm kind of curious on those two things in relation to the $1 million that's being parked for the animal shelter, meaning what upgrades are we going to do now? The bid process, I hear an engineering firm. I'd be really curious to know if they have shelter experience because it's not the same as just building a regular building. And what is the timeline about that? And is that going to be also a public hearing item?
So in the building and structures that you're speaking of, that is specifically for the bid documents. It is a cost of $34,560 split between the 2 years. So we're beginning the project now in this current year, but we're expecting it to go over. And so that is basically to give us an outline, as Niran mentioned, so we know what we need in the animal shelter and we know what our plans are. So we have a plan for the $1 million. So the bid documents are paid out of code enforcement that you're referring to. However, the funding for it is paid out of a different fund, out of ARPA. As far as it being I'm not sure who the consultant is or if they have shelter experience.
We have originally selected a consultant to start doing the topography or survey, but we have not provided full scopes or selected a consultant for the full $1 million yet. So that now that the project has allocated the funding, most likely we'll have a formal proposal to get a consultant on board that has that experience.
Is there a timeline in regards to all this that we can follow?
So currently we have 4 projects in the pipeline. This one will follow after that. So right now I think we have 4 bids out. So that's going to take us all the way until September, August. But that we'll see. So after those 4 bids are received, an issue will start on the animal shelter project. Okay.
thank you. Anybody else in the public? Okay. If we have no one else in the public, we will go ahead and make a motion. Oh, let's close the public hearing. And then we'll move to adopt the resolution number 6519, adopting the 2022-2023 FY budget, including employee salary schedule, Division 4 of the Los Banos Policy and Procedures Manual and the Capital Improvement Plan Summary. Do I have a motion? Ms. Lewis?
Button.
There. Ms. Lewis?
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 6519 as read by title.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And do I have a second?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion from Ms. Lewis and a second from Councilmember Jones. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
We'll move to the next item, C, public hearing to receive public comment and consideration of a general plan amendment 2020-02 zone change number 2020-02 and mitigated negative declaration SCH 202-109-0191 for the development of two multifamily structures totaling 18,136 square feet with 16 residential units located at 1133 F Street, more specifically identified as assessors parcel numbers 025-152-005, Stonefield Home Incorporated. And we'll turn to Community and Economic Development Director, Souza Elms.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, and City Council. So the proposal before you tonight is to consider a mitigated negative declaration, State Clearinghouse number 202-109-0191, and Mitigation Monitoring Program, a general plan amendment 2020-02 to redesignate approximately 0.9 acres from industrial to high-density residential, and then a zone change 2020-02 to rezone approximately 0.9 acres from general commercial C1 to high-density residential. Just a bit of background, the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on April 13th, 2022, and recommended approval of the mitigated negative declaration, the general plan amendment, and zone change to the City Council, and then approved site plan review number 2020-06 for the development of two multifamily residential buildings consisting of a total of 16 units. So the decision before you tonight, or what is asked for consideration, is the mitigated negative declaration, the general plan amendment, and the zone change. The site plan review is under the authority and decision of the Planning Commission, which they approved back in April, but is contingent upon the general plan amendment and zone change. This is the location of the project site. This is at 1133 F Street. This is the southwest corner of F Street and Santa Rita Avenue. It is adjacent to the MacArthur Apartments, so it is just south of the MacArthur Apartments, which is high-density residential. Throughout the city, and especially as we're working through our current general plan update, we are looking at pockets throughout the city where we can spread multifamily. So it's not concentrated in just one area in our community, but that we can provide different income levels of housing throughout the community. And so this was a candidate. This was actually already identified as a site within the general plan update. But as that is still progressing through its programmatic level, the applicant has requested to move forward ahead of the general plan, but still consistent with our policies. So this is our current zoning map. The project site is highlighted is outlined in yellow. So just north of this, adjacent is the MacArthur Apartments. That's the area in brown. So that represents high-density residential. The existing current zoning is C1, which is general commercial. That's the pink color that you see. To the east is commercial. However, it does have existing residential uses, some mixed uses that are existing uses there. And then to the south, there in the purple is mixed use. However, our police station is a public facility, so that would also just be just south of this. And then that yellow color represents low-density residential. So as you can see within that surrounding area, there's high-density and low-density uses already existing. So according to CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, an initial study was prepared to identify and assess potential environmental impacts of this project. Staff determined that the project would not result in any significant environmental effects, provided that the mitigation measures described within the initial study and the mitigated neg deck are implemented. So staff then prepared a notice of intent and posted that with the county clerk, Merced County Clerk, and delivered to the Office of Planning and Research with the state of California for circulation. That circulation period started September 10th, 2021 and closed on October 11th, 2021. And as of today's date, no comments have been received. So project analysis, so staff's analysis consists of reviewing the existing site and also the compatibility with adjacent uses, reviewing our policies of our general plan and our zoning code. And so based on the analysis, the compatibility with adjacent uses is compatible. It is adjacent, as previously stated, to existing multifamily apartments. This project will enhance the surrounding area, will remove blight from the surrounding area and improve its neighborhood character. And it will assist us with our housing element compliance. So we need to provide more multifamily for compliance within our housing element, which we are required to provide an allocation for various income levels throughout our community. So this is a 3D rendering and elevation of what the project will look like. I do want to remind the council that tonight's consideration is just focused on land use, and that the Planning Commission, as a part of their review, approved the site plan review, which does consist of the elevation component. But I did want to show what this project would look like, as I believe that that is a valid component to validating the land use being compatible for the area and enhancing the area. So this particular slide is showing the corner of F Street and Santa Rita. So this would be looking south, southwest at that corner. As you can see, it'll be a two-story structure. The total of those two-story structures will be 16 units in total. Next slide. This is the 3D elevation of looking at the project from the parking lot. So this is looking, you're facing north. So the parking lot is behind the apartment complexes. It will be surrounded, there's going to be a masonry wall between the south property line, and then it will be fenced around as well as a perimeter, but it will not be a gated community. This is another view of from the parking lot, but facing northeast. As you can see with the stone veneer, balconies, it'll be a nice addition to this area of the community. And then this is a view looking east down the street on F Street, and this is the frontage of the facility. So with that, staff is recommending that the City Council would open the public hearing. And I do want to note that a public hearing notice was published in the Merced Sun-Star on June 3rd, and as of today's date, no comments have been received. So staff is requesting that the City Council provide a motion of intent to adopt resolution number 6520 to approve mitigated negative declaration, state clearinghouse number 2021090191, and mitigation monitoring reporting plan for F Street multifamily project, and then provide a motion of intent to adopt resolution number 6521 to approve General Plan Amendment Number 2020-02 to redesignate approximately 0.9 acres from industrial to high-density residential. And then the last is to waive the first reading and introduce by title ordinance number 1198 to adopt zone change number 2020-02 to rezone approximately 0.9 acres from general commercial C1 to high-density residential R3 at 1133 F Street. And that concludes my report. I do want to note the request for a motion of intent is so that because the ordinance requires a second reading at the next city council meeting, it would that be that the motion of intent would be placed tonight so that formal adoption of those resolutions would happen concurrently with the ordinance. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I'll turn to the council, see if there's anyone that has any questions. Mr. Jones?
Questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Lamas?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I've got a question regarding the access points or the intersections from F Street and G Street onto Mercy Springs. Is there any improvement or traffic mitigation efforts going to be implemented in that area in order to support the additional traffic?
Sure. So this particular project, because it is only 16 units, does not meet the general plan threshold of 100 trips per day. It is thought with 16 units, it'd be 32 trips per day, 2 cars per unit. And we also, though, consulted Caltrans, our partners at District 10, with an intergovernmental review, had them review our site plan, and they felt it was not necessary to conduct a traffic study based on the low threshold of units, and they did not see any concern at those intersections with Mercy Springs.
Very good. Thank you very much
You're
for that
welcome.
thorough work. I have a question, I guess, more question, but the proposal or if the public safety has any issues with increased traffic with units responding or conducting emergency services, are there any concerns from that point of view?
Evening, Mr. Councilmember. No, we've looked at that site plan a few times over the past several months, and I don't see anything extraordinary that sticks out that's going to be problematic for our team.
Fantastic. I just want to ensure that.
I appreciate the question.
Roger that. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
If I may add, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, just to answer your question, Councilmember Galmas, a very good question. Within the site plan review, there's conditions of approval that require a security surveillance camera system around the exterior, and that was a condition from our police chief.
Fantastic. Again, asking those questions, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Lamas. Ms. Lewis?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just have a couple of questions, and this is piggybacking off of Councilmember Yamas. Stacy, you indicated that there would probably be 2 cars per household. Is there going to be a restriction on this property that only X amount of people can live there? Because as you know, in today's time, just about everybody in the household has a car, so then you're going to end up having overflow on the street, and that could be an issue as well.
Sure, and which were concerns of staff as well as the applicant and of public safety. Those were concerns that we did discuss. The city is prohibited from providing that type of restriction, unfortunately, due to the housing and community development. The city cannot prohibit how many people can live in a dwelling unit. And to condition a project, we would not be allowed to do so legally. However, the project is adequately parked because that was a concern. It also has a fire lane and fire markings that the fire department required at the front of the units, which will mitigate overflow parking on the street. But what we do see based on the amount of bedrooms within this facility and the low amount of units, it should not be, I mean, we're not talking 100 units or more, that it should be adequate, the amount of parking provided. And in addition to that, the threshold that was used for the traffic study purposes, and that 2 trips per day per unit is based on industry standard, and it's the Vehicle Transportation Code.
The traffic generation
Yes.
manual? Yeah, the traffic generation
generation
manuals is typically take care of and get updated on an annual basis. And for this project, that 2 vehicle is only associated with peak hour traffic, not for the entire day.
Right.
And maybe I didn't word my question correctly. I probably should have said, does the property owner, developer have plans for restrictions on how many cars can be on that property, how many people can live in that building, so that we don't have these issues of just overcrowding in our community when, you know, a unit is built to only house so many people and there's only so much parking there for cars for each particular unit. And with that question, I'd like to piggyback to say, does the developer plan to keep and manage this property, or are they going to sell it off? So maybe they can answer that when you open up the public hearing. The last question is, you know, this is an issue on land use. And we're looking at, you know, some schematics here with what the building is going to look like and, you know, what the landscape looks like. But is this going to come back to the city council for approval on any of that going forward? Because I don't even know what kind of plants they're going to be putting down here on this property.
Sure, that was under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. They held a design review study session, which looked at elevations, landscaping, and lighting specifically, and then that item was brought back during a public hearing and evaluated by the Planning Commission based on the city's zoning code and those findings within. It was approved. So the elevations and landscaping were all a part of that entitlement that was approved by the Planning Commission.
Okay. So then I assume that if, you know, I can come to see you to see a copy of that. I guess I would just like to maybe make a recommendation going forward, even though the Planning Commission, that's in their privy, is just to keep, you know, put a copy of that in our file so that we could see what the Planning Commission approved in regards to elevation and landscaping. And I think those are my two questions, well, 3 actually. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And no more further questions up here. We'll open up to the public hearing at this time. And if you could please state your name again.
Ann McCauley, local resident. Is this, each structure is going to be 18,000 square feet? Or is it total between the 2 structures?
It's in total.
So that means that if I look at this right, each housing unit is basically going to be about 1,133 square feet each. Is that correct? So
Right.
I can't imagine that that's going to be able to house very many people. Are we talking 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom?
Yeah, I think there's a combination, I'm sorry, there's combinations of 1 and 2 bedrooms, and the applicant can speak further
So
to
the
that.
square footage will vary in units. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the public?
Good evening, Mr. Pro Tem, fellow council members. Rick Mummert, Benchmark Engineering, 507 J Street, Los Banos, also with an office in Modesto. Apologize in advance for missing the staff report. I actually thought the meeting started at 7 tonight, so I probably got messed up between cities. But appreciate Stacy making the presentation. I think we want to just mention the input and guidance that we've had from council members, planning commission, staff, to kind of elevate the application package that we have. And I agree, if you would have that planning commission package within your package, right? You see what was approved. The color renderings that were presented at the Plan Commission in my staff report doesn't even come close to what it looked like at the Plan Commission presentation. So they are very, very detailed. The landscaping was enhanced and elevated also and tied in. I mean, Rudy with the planning staff had us go back and change the elevations to put in the actual elevations, into the elevations, the actual landscaping that was going to be proposed. So if you get an opportunity to see that, it's a really nice building. We know this is a vacant area, and I think with this project and with the new police station going in, it's going to start redeveloping this area, and I think it's a good project. To answer the question about the restriction on the number of residents, I don't think we could do that by law. So I doubt if our client would probably do that. But with as the lady mentioned, and I'll confirm it, that 50% of the units are one bedroom, 50% of the units are two bedroom. So there may not be a whole bunch of people here in 16 units. The other thing is not only do we have the 2 parking stalls per unit, we also have guest parking also. It may be like 4 or 5 additional stalls. That's not even counting the street frontage that we have there also. But we think it fits in with the multifamily across the street and ties into that also. And by the way, I have Tiffany Marshall with Stonefield here with me tonight if you have any questions for her or Stonefield. But with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Oh, keep and develop. You also had that one. I don't know that answer. In conversations that I've had with our client, he's mentioned that he would like to try and build this, but things change all the time. Price fluctuation on materials and goods right now are just terrible. So I don't know what that answer is today. Other than that, I can answer any questions.
Appreciate it. Anyone up here have any questions?
Hey, Rick, can you repeat that last part that you said?
The portion where
about the
Ms. Lewis asked if our client was going to keep and develop this site, and I don't know that answer today. He had discussed with me that he was talking about building this and seeing how it was received within the city.
Okay. And just like any investor, they can build something today and tomorrow that their plans change and they go to sell it. And depending on that new style of ownership, it could go up as far as quality, it could go down. So you just got to take it as it comes, council.
Well, I think in the Plan Commission, in the site plan review and that, there was conditions in there that it was supposed to be constructed to what was approved. So no downgrade in landscaping because we had to enhance the landscaping from what we originally submitted.
Well, we definitely want it to look like those photos up there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We had the photos.
I
We
missed
have
your
the-
presentation. Those were
Yeah, that's what
wonderful
we want.
looking buildings.
That's
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Lewis, did you have anything else?
One other question in regards to the parking. Now, if the property owner plans to develop this, which I'm hoping is the case, have you thought about perhaps assigned parking? You have X amount of stalls for 2 cars per household. Have you thought about perhaps assigning parking stalls to the people depending on what their apartment number is?
Yeah.
So that you're not having conflict with the residents, concerned about, I'm coming home and I don't have a place to park because
Well, Benchmark
they're all
is,
gone.
yeah, Benchmark has worked on several apartment projects with API, who's the architect in this project, and we definitely assign the stalls. It's not a first come, first served basis.
So that would be the case for this development?
I believe so, except for the visitor parking. The visitor parking would be first come, first serve.
Yes, that I
as
understand.
visitors,
yes.
but every project I've been involved with them has assigned parking.
Okay.
And
All
they don't tell the unit, this is a smaller project, obviously, and somebody may be able to figure it out someday, but each unit doesn't say apartment 3, right? That doesn't say
Yeah,
that on their
usually
stall.
there's a number on the stall, which,
That is
it
not
doesn't
corresponding.
correspond with the apartment, but a person in that apartment knows
Yeah.
what their stall number is.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I don't know that we can make that mandated, but certainly I hope that if we can't, and, Stacy, maybe you can answer that question, that would be a positive consideration for
So
the
we're doing the
developer.
GPA and rezone tonight versus the site
Right.
plan approval?
Yeah, that would have been under the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Tonight is purely land use. Mr. Vaughn, I'm not sure that would be right within the jurisdiction, but if the applicant agrees to provide that consideration, that would be voluntary, I think, and something that they can consider.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment on this? The biggest thing that you have to get is that enforcement of that. So we're not the enforcers on it.
I'm not talking about enforcement, I'm talking about
Yeah.
providing
I mean,
parking
we're
for the
getting down to
residents.
how to
And
manage
that's
an
not
apartment
I
complex.
have the floor. I'm talking about the residents of that building, which a lot of apartments do. They assign parking, and it doesn't become a hassle. The overflow parking as far as, the visitors, that's understandable. And if, there's an extra vehicle that may be in a household resident, then that can, go into the visitor area.
I'm pretty sure I would almost bet my life on it that is pretty typical of assigning those stalls, and we don't have a problem with assigning the stalls if we, however you want to read it in or what we have to do, or I won't say modifications, voluntarily agree to do that, then we could do
And
that.
it's merely a suggestion, just to enhance the project as a whole. And I appreciate your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It could possibly be dealt with in the business licensing portion of the management of the property.
Okay. Yeah, Tiffany has, I won't say how many years because she's young, but she's got a lot of years' experience in apartment and property management. That's your background.
Yeah, it would be very difficult.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you.
Do I have anyone else in the public that would like to speak on this item? At this time, we'll close the public hearing and we'll move to start with the first City Council Resolution number 6520, approving the mitigated negative declaration SCH 202-1090191 and mitigate monitoring reporting plan for F Street multifamily project located at 1133 F Street, more specifically identified as assessor's parcel number 025152005. And this will be a motion of intent to adopt. Do I have a motion? Mr. Jones?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion of intent to adopt City Council Resolution number 6520 as submitted.
Do I have a second? Mr. Lamas? All right, have a motion from Mr. Jones and a second from Mr. Lamas. All in favor?
Aye.
No noes? Okay. Resolution number 6520 has passed. We'll move to the next one. City Council Resolution number 6521, approving General Plan Amendment 2020-02 to redesignate approximately 0.9 acres located at 1133 F Street, more specifically identified as assessor's parcel number 025-152-005, from industrial to high-density residential. And this will be a motion of intent to adopt. Mr. Jones?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion of intent to adopt City Council Resolution number 6521 as submitted.
And do I have a second? Mr. Lamas?
Mayor Pro Tem will second that.
All right. I have a motion from Councilmember Jones and a second by Councilmember Lamas. All in favor?
Aye.
No noes. Resolution number 6521 passed. We'll move to the second one. This is going to be ordinance number 1198. This will be amending the official zoning map by rezoning property located at 1133 F Street on assessor's parcel number 025-152-005 from general commercial C-1 to high-density residential R-3. And we will be waiving the first reading, ordinance number 1198. Do I have a motion? Mr. Jones?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to waive the first reading of ordinance number 1198 as read by title.
And do I have a second? Mr. Lamas?
I'll second that.
All right, and this will be first reading introduction. All in favor?
Aye.
No noes. We'll move to the next motion. This will be adopting, oh, I'm sorry. Introducing ordinance number 1198, amending the official zoning map by rezoning property located at 1133 F Street on assessor's parcel number 025-152-005 from general commercial C1 to high-density residential R3. Do I have a motion? Mr. Jones?
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1198 as read by title.
Do I have a second? Mr. Lamas?
I'll second that.
Since this is a
Roll call vote.
we will call a vote for this one. Ms. Melanie?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right. Motion has passed with 4 yeses. Adopted, our ordinance number 1198. Introducing. We'll move to our next item, number 9. Consideration of approval of City Council Resolution number 6522, declaring the existence of Level 2 water supply shortage conditions. And we'll turn to Public Works Director, City Engineer, Mr. Than.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council member. Tonight, what I have in front of you is declarations and agenda items for you to consider declaring the existence of Level 2, which is a 20% reductions in water demand for our city. This is in compliance with the Governor Executive Order number N-7-2022 and the new emergency regulation with the State Water Board. So just a little background, in 2021, in 4 different occasions, the governor has proclaimed state of emergency that continued to today and exists across all counties of California due to the extreme and expanding drought conditions. On March 28 this year, the governor signed Executive Order N-7-22 calling all Californians to reduce water use and direct the State Water Board to consider adopting an emergency regulations requiring all urban supplier, including the city, to implement Level 2 demand reduction actions. Again, that's the 20% reductions in water productions. On May 24th, 2022, the Water Board hold a formal meeting adopting the emergency regulations. This new emergency regulation include the following. One is requiring water supplier to submit a water shortage contingency plan, which the city has in 2021, and implements the demand reduction actions for shortage level 2. Again, this is 20% reductions. One new thing that is included in that regulation is to prohibit the use of potable water for irrigations of non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and institutional site. This emergency regulation is to go into effect June 10th of this year and will remain in effect for 1 year unless the State Water Board modified or readopts this emergency regulations. As part of this regulation, the city has the options to follow the direct language from the regulations or follow our adopted water shortage contingency plans. In our water shortage contingency plan that was adopted in 2021, the City Council requires the following actions. One is to restrict landscape irrigation runoff and limit overwatering when feasible. 2, landscape irrigation is prohibited between the hours of 11 and 7 p.m. This restriction has already been adopted as part of our city ordinance back in 2017. Number 3, landscape irrigation is to be limited to specific day. Currently, our ordinance requires landscaping for 3 days per week, typically on Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday for even number household, and for odd number, it's going to be Saturday, Tuesday, and Thursday. No watering is allowed on Monday. Number 4 is car, trucks, and trailer can only be washed using automatic shut-off valve. 5 is potable water may not be used for washing hard surfaces. That's including concrete, asphalt, and etc. 6, restaurants are required to only serve water upon request. And 7, lodging establishments are required to provide the options to opt out of linen services. And number 8, this is in compliance with the new regulation, is that to prohibit the use of potable water for irrigations of non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and institutional sites. On your package, I have included the fact sheets from the state water boards that define what's non-functional turf, and additional information in regard to what considered commercial, industrial, and institutional site. It is worth noting that for the city parks, that is exempt as part of this regulation, so the city can continue to follow that. Also, this ban on using potable for irrigation of non-functional turf does not apply to residential area. Okay. So with that, I ask for the City Council to adopt a resolution declaring that level 2 water supply shortage condition exists, which would implement the provisions of Ordinance Number 186 per the Municipal Code Section 6-7.28 to reduce water consumption with the goal of achieving a 20% reduction as called for by the Executive Order N-7-22 and by the State Water Board Resolution Number 2022-0018.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. I'll go through council, see if there's any questions. Councilmember Jones? No questions. Councilmember Lamas?
No questions.
Councilmember Lewis? All right. At this time, then we'll go ahead and take a motion to adopt resolution number 6522. Councilmember Jones?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to adopt City Council Resolution Number 6522 as submitted.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mr. Lamas?
Yes, sir, I'll second that.
All right. I have a motion from Councilmember Jones and a second by Mr. Lamas. All in favor?
Aye.
No noes. Resolution number 6522 is passed. All right, now we'll move to item number 10. This is a council member request, discussion regarding homeless encampment, from Councilmember Lewis. And we'll turn to start off with Police Chief Breezy.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, community that is here. Thank you for all for being here. Some good conversations tonight. I'm going to provide an update. Councilmember Lewis, if you don't mind, I'll provide an update PowerPoint, and then we can have a discussion after that. That's okay. Okay, so tonight we're going to have a discussion about the homeless camp that is specifically, in this case, behind the residence of 2151 East Pacheco. And if you look at that graphic there on the screen in your handout, you'll see that yellow shaded area. That is specifically the site we're talking about. It's a city piece of property of between 4 and 5 acres that has been a common site for homeless individuals for some time now. It is bordered to the east by the Gilbert Gonzalez apartment complex, to the south by the rail trail, to the north by the trailer park there at 2151 East Pacheco, and to the west, it's bordered by a piece of private property that is also a vacant piece of land as well. I point that piece out just because, and it's this parcel right here, if you can see my cursor moving. I point that out only because it becomes part of the conversation later on. To give a brief piece of history on the site, like I mentioned, it has been a location of interest for individuals experiencing homelessness in the past. It's been years that they've come and gone from that location. During COVID, we followed the California Department of Public Health guidelines, one of which asked to keep individuals stationary to avoid spread, so keeping homeless individuals where they were so they didn't spread COVID. As a result, individuals experiencing homelessness were not generally asked to leave the areas that they lived in. This just happened to be one of those locations in our community where individuals were located. Fast forward a little bit to November of 2021. Project Room Key opens. That is a non-congregate shelter with 25 rooms located at 2169 East Pacheco. A number of individuals from that encampment inside that yellow area that were present there were targeted specifically for housing. Unfortunately, we've mentioned this before, that location filled up within 3 hours. All 25 rooms were full. That left a remaining number of individuals still within that yellow area. We had been working with Project Roomkey, trying to synergize a cleanup of that campsite. And so at the same time we were removing individuals into housing, we also asked the individuals that were there in that yellow area to vacate so that we could clean the area. Unfortunately, when we moved those individuals out of that area, we didn't anticipate them moving directly on the other side of the cinder block wall. So on the west side of that yellow shaded area, there's about an 8-foot tall cinder block wall that runs from the rail trail all the way up to Pacheco. Well, they went there and they stayed there. Needless to say, the property owner was not very pleased with that. So we began the process of identifying a better way of removing those individuals from that area with the understanding that more than likely they're going to go back to the location that they had just left from. So one of the things that we did was we worked with a number of different community-based organizations, and we all supported the plan that we came up with. And that became a partnership between us, code enforcement, New Direction, the county-wide outreach provider for Merced County, the Merced County Community Action Agency, which is the vendor who manages, oversees Project Roomkey, the Merced County Rescue Mission, who manages 3 different bridging type homes in our community, Bethel Community Church, which is a primary provider for homeless services in our community, the Salvation Army, and the County of Merced. So the idea was that we would work in partnership to team up to help facilitate a manageable process out at that site. So at the January 5th City Council meeting, staff presented a budget amendment to allow for the construction of that fenced area back at that site. That meeting, we talked about where it would go, how we would build it, the partnership that we talked about. And the goals with that was really, we were trying to do something better than we had done the last time. I think I mentioned the word, we went in with both eyes open in this, and we do with homelessness issues because it's a very, very difficult, complicated issue to deal with across our community. But one of our goals was to try and minimize the impacts that we foresaw coming because of what we had just seen a few months prior when they were there in that yellow shaded area during COVID. Second, one of the goals was to try and work around that Boise case. Martin v. Boise came about as a result of a city in Idaho who attempted to attempted to criminally prosecute individuals who are homeless. It went through the courts, and the Martin v. Boise case came out. It affects all of us in pretty much the western states. It says that if you do not have adequate housing to house your homeless individuals, that it is a violation of the 8th Amendment for cruel and unusual punishment to criminally prosecute them for being homeless, just for being homeless alone. So we tried to recognize the limitations from that case while still providing some structure to that area that we had been working through in a lot of the other areas that we work through in our community to try and again minimize those impacts. PRK and Operation Project Roomkey, we also knew that it would provide for more efficient outreach in our attempts to rapidly rehouse and house individuals. It's one of the key themes that you hear from homeless experts in the field is that rapid housing is a primary way of transitioning people out of homelessness. That is the leading way to make it more sustainable, longer lasting than any other method that they've seen so far. So move on to that next part there, that asterisk. We knew that this wasn't a permanent solution. We wanted to try to do something better than we did the last time. We knew it wasn't a citywide solution. We weren't going to solve our homelessness problem by building this fence. But we felt I had to do something in an attempt to try and do it better than we did the last time. And as you'll see in some of the slides coming up, you're going to find that we're still impacted by homelessness across our city. It's not just, unfortunately, as much as I try, as much as I wish that it were not the case, were impacted by homelessness across the city with similar complaints. Going back to the January 5th meeting, the budget amendment was passed unanimously. Took us a while to set up the timing to get the fence up with the contractor, but by late February, that fenced area was erected, and by right around March 1st, individuals were allowed to go into that area. And I'll show you some, here's a picture here. So again, that's the picture of the yellow shaded area, the location that we're talking about. And this is a rough diagram, not the scale of the location of the fenced area that we erected. Coincidentally, this satellite photo is 2 or 3 years old, and it is representative of the original problem that we encountered at this location. You see pockets of tents, encampments all along this border here between us and the park folks. It grew, and the individuals moved over to the eastern side. They moved back here along the trail to the southwest. They went all the way back, all the way to the water tank, and we moved them. So the end result was, instead of it going back to this, we're going to try something different. We erected the fence, and that's where we're at today. Okay, so let's talk specifically about calls for service at 2151 East Pacheco. The next 3 slides are all trying to be consistent in timing, and so they all represent calls for service, police, fire, for the period of March 1st to June 12th. And they're all designated to be within those either the 3-year period of 2020, 2021, and 2022, which you'll see in the first 2 slides. And then the third slide is specific to 2022 since the opening of the encampment. So these numbers here, this chart represents calls for service at that location that did not involve homelessness. I bring this up because we're talking about police and fire responses to that location. I thought it was reasonable to add this slide just to show that not only are we out there for those calls that are related to homeless individuals, and I'll get to those here momentarily, but we're out there for other reasons. So there's a presence of law enforcement, there's a presence of the fire department there more often than just those calls that you'll see here, and I'll explain that in a minute. So you see in 2020, it was 20 law enforcement calls during that time period, 16 fire calls. Again, these are all not involving individuals experiencing homelessness. 13 law enforcement calls and 6 fire calls in 2021. And you see the increase there to 26 and 18 in 2022. So I'm going to stop there for just a brief second and see if anyone has any questions about this slide.
Do I have any questions up here? Ms. Lewis?
I'll keep going. There's always time for later.
Okay.
Okay. The second slide is that same time period, March 1st to June 12th, involving individuals, the calls involved individuals that were homeless. Same time period again, 2020, 2021, 2022. So you see that in 2020, there were 10 law enforcement responses involving homeless individuals during that time frame. 2021, there were 2 fire incidences in that time frame and 5 law enforcement. The yellows represent extra patrol efforts by our staff who are just in the area. They document the fact that they're driving through this location, this address as part of their daily patrol duties. It could be for an assortment of reasons. A resident might be gone and ask for someone to drive by their house while they're gone. So that's what those 2 represent. You see in 2022, we had 17 law enforcement visits and 2 fire visits, and then the 38 extra patrol visits, and I'll explain those here. Again, same time period, March 1st to June 12th, 2022. Now this slide is specific to 2022 and represents our data as it relates to the opening of the encampment in March. So you see March, there's 2 calls from the police department, 1 from the fire department. April, it jumps to 9 and 1. That's a significant jump, I recognize that. in May, it goes down to 5. And you see here that there are the extra patrols increase during the month of May. I met with the folks at this location on May 3rd, I think it was, and immediately recognized that they were upset about this, and that's the last thing I want. And so we put a plan of action into place with our patrol teams to start picking up their efforts of patrolling this location as much as they could. Move forward to June. The first 12 days of June, we see 1 call and then the 20 extra patrols. So some of the data that we're talking about here, some of the limitations in the data that we saw is that sometimes people call the police department and wish to remain anonymous. And at times it's really hard to extract where and who the source of that call was. So if you call in, for example, and say, hey, there's a fight at the homeless camp, there's examples of people at the homeless camp calling about other people at the camp, beating them up and things of that nature. So we really tried to reasonably articulate the calls for service and provide a fair representation. We did word searches. We did searches for 2100 block of rail trail, for the address. There's some other ways that we do it in our records management system because we want to be transparent about this issue. We do notice that there's a pretty significant increase in April. Okay, so I bring this slide up again just to show you and remind you of what we did out there. We erected a 6-foot fence that went around in that red area in an attempt to keep individuals away from the fence line here along the east side at Gilbert Gonzalez and along the rail trail to the east of that. So I'm going to show you a few pictures of what I'm referring to. So these are site photographs. This is an old photograph here, COVID time, pre-COVID, of what it could look like on any given day out there. This is along that 8-foot cinder block wall. In the very distance, you see the fence line for the trailer park there. And this was taken on Monday. I didn't doll the picture up by any stretch. That's the fence that we put up. Because one of the things that we experienced was, in addition to calls from the folks here and the folks at the apartment complex, we were receiving calls for individuals who lived at the College Greens residential neighborhood. So the idea was to attempt to provide some minimization of the problem or to reduce the impacts of homeless individuals at this camp. This slide was taken, or this picture was taken on the right on Monday. Again, all the photos that you're going to see tonight were taken on Monday. The old photo here is a representation, kind of somewhat similar to that.
Chief, I got one question.
Oh, yeah.
If you could go back a couple of slides where you have the red lining. There,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So the red line is a representation of the encampment today?
Yes.
Okay. So it does, I guess what I'm hearing from the residents is that they're having issues with things that are thrown over the masonry wall or their fence into their area so that they can see it. So how is that possible? Are they exiting this red area and throwing things over? How's that happening?
I would imagine there are an assortment of reasons why that's happening or how that's happening. It can be individuals, they walk from Ward Road, they walk along the east side of the complex here. They walk along the west side to get to the newly opened gas station that's there. You can't see it in the photograph here, but there's a water basin inside this property. And they walk through and they throw things. The drummer that they were referring to earlier used to have a setup here in the old encampment. And we, knock on wood, we've at least temporarily tried to fix that as best we could. But it happens and for a certain different reasons, to answer your question.
Okay, so that this encampment does not abut their wall at all?
Correct.
Do we know approximately, just in general, how many feet away it is?
Yeah, I'm going to say we pushed it back 50 to 70 feet from the wall, and that's a guess for tonight. If you look on the picture on the right, you can see the wall to the complex here. That's the cinder block wall in the back, and you can just make out the picture for the fence line right there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. And again, this was one of the goals, was to attempt to prevent this problem from happening. This is a third photograph. This was to the east. If you're looking at the rail trail, looking towards the water tank, because the other big complaint we got was from the Gilbert Gonzalez apartment complex. It's another 150 apartments there. And just out of sight of this picture, there's a park that belongs to the complex. And we could, thanks to our Public Works Department, our code enforcement, they do cleanups routinely here and across the city. But this was just taken on any given day a few years back to show that individuals way back here, if you can see my pointer, is the white fence off of Ward Road, the white metal fence, the entry to the walking trail back to the east. The picture on the right is representative of Monday. Again, we just went out and took a picture. Trying really hard to make a difference in this effort because we know it's difficult. So I just want to talk briefly about the problem. I mentioned it previously. This fence was not designed to solve our problem. We're trying to do a lot of things that are more permanent solutions that we hope to eventually provide a more permanent solution. But these photographs here that I'm going to show you are of other encampments across town that were also taken 2 days ago. This picture here is just west of this Food for Less Parking shopping center. This is the cinder block wall. This is an encampment. We have issues at that location, fairly common. This is the rail trail behind the car wash in about the 1200 block, behind the courthouse, behind what's going to be the new police department. This is another view, just instead of looking east, it's looking west. That is behind the Taco Bell. This is an individual camped out at the Dollar Tree on East Pacheco in the Home Depot, the Food for Less shopping center. During the summer months, homeless individuals seek out shade under trees. There's 2 trees here. So there's this one, and there's one just out of sight. And you'll find a bunch of belongings for this individual. This is right across the street from the El Domingo Market. This is an encampment adjacent to the cemetery property. This is an encampment just north of the Los Banos rental yard. There's another yard here. There's a PG&E office. There's a church here. I drove by it the other day, and there's 2 chairs. An individual was just sitting here in his chair, enjoying his day. This is the trailhead for the Pioneer Road, not the rail trail, the canal trail. Individual decided to park his trailer here and his vehicle. And all of these examples that I'm showing you are all current works of our code enforcement team to keep those areas clean. This area is on West I and West J. To the left, you will find the Los Banos Dental Office. This is a church/school here. We have communications with the individuals who occupy this building here because they tend to congregate in that area because they offer a food meal plan for homeless individuals. This is in the Denny's parking lot. There's a camp there, an individual's clothing that he was just cleaning. And I go on. This is a camp west of the airport property. And last, this was an individual sleeping at the park on West I at Page Park. I only provide these because this problem is everywhere in our community, and I am terribly sympathetic to the individuals, the residents at 2151. But this is a terribly complicated problem that we're trying to work through. I want to talk about some good news, because there is good news in amongst all of this. The city of Los Banos experienced this most significant drop in the county, mind you, between 2021's point in time count, when we had a record high number of 100 individuals who were unsheltered and homeless. There's a difference in definition, legal definition from the state, regarding sheltered homeless and unsheltered homeless. You can be considered homeless under the definition if you're jumping from couch to couch and you have no permanent residence. But in this case, we're talking about unsheltered people actually living on the streets. When we did our count in 2021 in January, there's 109 individuals that we counted that were homeless. In 2022, after the opening of Project Room Key, our bridging homes, we brought that number down to 51. I know it doesn't answer the questions and the concerns that they have at the park, but we're working on it. And we're trying every day to do everything we can to solve this problem. I honestly believe that if there's a jurisdiction in this county that can solve homelessness, it's us, because of the approach that we're taking. Since January 1st, we started a project called the 100-Day Challenge to End Homelessness under the direction of the governor's office. It's basically a goal-setting exercise where in this case, 4 different jurisdictions were selected: us, Sacramento, oh my goodness, now I'm drawing a blank, Riverside, I forget the other one. We actually did really good, probably better than many of the other jurisdictions. We were able to take 21 individuals off the streets, transition them to the temporary housing through Project Room Key or into our bridging homes, and then find them permanent housing solutions. In that same time, since January 1st, we've taken 35 individuals off of the streets of our community and found them transitional housing. It's the first step to a longer-term solution. Last count of Project Room Key, 17 of those individuals who were living at PRK had actually gotten jobs. To me, that's very positive. To me, that's moving in the right direction. Okay, so before we open up the questions from the council, I don't mean to minimize complaints from anyone in this room. I'm certainly here to stand before you and them and be accountable for those. I hope I've shown you that we're trying. We are certainly trying. Homelessness is an issue of statewide significance, statewide importance that has negatively impacted every community's quality of life. It's in every part of our community, as I've shown, and we're trying really hard to minimize those impacts. I mentioned we're working in a collaborative way with all of our other community-based organizations. Heck, I will take assistance from any group who's willing to help us, who's willing to be a participant in our efforts. We'll work with them. We work from a solution-oriented perspective because we honestly think we can make a difference. I think we've shown that we have made a difference. I don't think we're out of the woods yet by any stretch of the imagination, and we certainly are trying every single day. But I think we can get our numbers to zero. I think we can make a tremendous effect on not only this situation, but in some of the other situations. I received a couple emails today from a property owner specifically on the rail trail about the 900 block, and I receive emails from this individual frequently because he's having the same problems. It's very frustrating. I'll close with saying that, like I mentioned, we're trying really hard to work with our residents to make sure that we are addressing the issues. There's a lot of work behind the scenes to see if we can come up with a longer-term solution for our community to have a longer-lasting effect on minimizing and making homelessness go to zero, because that's our goal. It's a lofty one, but we've shown that we can do it. I think we can do it. It's going to be a lot of work. There's a lot of gray hair already, but I think we can do it. There's no other jurisdiction in our state that's perfected the program of eliminating homelessness in our community, but we've shown success. Like I said, 21 permanently housed, 35 transitionally housed. They found employment, and that's all since January 1. But I know it doesn't answer the questions that these folks have. And we're committed to working with them to making that a permanent solution so that they do feel safe. I don't want them, it bothers me every time someone gets up here and says that they feel unsafe to be in their home. And so we're working on that. I hope you see that the police department has taken a serious approach to being out there at night. A lot of those extra patrol requests are all while we are all sleeping. 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, they're out there. They're out there driving the streets. They're out walking the encampment. They're doing what we can. And I know it doesn't answer the question. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Chief. And I'll go through council. Mr. Jones, do you have any questions? Comments?
No questions for right now.
Mr. Lamas?
Sorry about that, council member. Go ahead.
No problem. Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much for putting this information together, to working again on this issue, to try to provide some clarity, information, and engagement with the public and everyone who's affected by this. I understand that the police department and everybody in the police department, code enforcement, doesn't want this to happen. They don't want our residents, our fellow residents, to have to suffer through this. So I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the numbers that you've done here. I appreciate the improvement, the positive that we've done in that population. So again, I want to emphasize that I appreciate that.
Yeah, no.
And I think that one of the major concerns from the folks over at the trailer development area is that the engagement was not at the initial, when this idea was a concept. And I think that that is one that, again, if we had reached out to them, I know I tried to ask about this, was not provided the information. I know that I spoke with you a little bit about it. You provided me with some of the limitations, some of the ideas, but then the communication broke down. And so I think that's where the residents, in my opinion, from what I spoke with them, is that, hey, how did this happen? You know, we wake up one day and we have this facility that we didn't know about, that they felt that they were unimportant and not important enough to be engaged in the process. So I'm very happy that now we're able to provide this information. What we're trying to do, the goals, the intent, and then also the restrictions that we're operating under. But, you know, again, that one thing that I'm concerned is that you know, homelessness does not mean that you are not susceptible or not responsible for yourself, and you're not obligated to follow the penal code, the health and safety code, or any of our code regulations. You know, public indecency, vagrancy, all these things that they're doing out there. I mean, at some point, I even saw wood frame structures out there. You know,
Oh, yeah.
that these are, you know, building code violations. These are violations that anybody else would be cited on. But yet these folks seem to have some kind of immunity against these other public safety measures that the rest of us have to abide by. And so I think that's one of the concerns, is that they operated with almost immunity because they're quote unquote homeless. You know, again, I don't know if they are or not, because it kind of, it's a shifting kind of a situation with some of these folks. They could, you know, have housing, but they congregate with, you know, like-minded folks, you know. So again, I think that's one area that if we could provide more citation, more apprehension, have more people held accountable for what violations they are committed. I understand that, you know, that with our inability to hold and detain folks like we used to, I understand that's another limitation that prevents us from getting to where we want to go. But I think if we could at least talk about that, or you can discuss that with your command staff. And, you know, I leave that completely up to you. You are the expert in that, and I trust that, you know, you want the best solution. But I would ask that if you could lean into holding these folks accountable who are violating these again, penal codes, health and safety code violations, and other municipal codes. I think that would also help in letting these folks know that, no, you're not above the law. You are accountable just like any other citizen. And again, thank you very much for the work you and your officers, your code enforcement personnel are doing. It's a tough tangle with these folks because you never know what they're telling you, and they say one thing, and the next thing you know, it's they're back doing the exact thing that they promised you they wouldn't do. And there's limited staff, limited resources. But I appreciate the statistics that show that you are out there, you are responding. The officers are taking an additional patrol, maybe before shift, after shift, during shift, to provide that coverage. I've gone out there additional times, you know, walk my dog, et cetera, and I've seen some improvement. So again, I don't live there, so I don't experience it every day. You know, it's one of those things, you know, like speeding. You know, we got a lot of speeders, need cops out here. Cop shows up, no speeders, right? You showed up, but you know, it's one of those things. It's a constant slippery bubble that you're on. So, but again, thank you very much, Chief. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamas. Ms. Lewis?
Mayor Pro Tem, do you mind if I address
Go ahead, Mr.
the early engagements? I'm accountable for that one. I should have done a better job at that. So, man, if I could go back in time on this one, I most certainly would, because we work really hard to not have that problem happen. And I don't have an answer for that one because it's my fault though, because it didn't happen. And second, on the building structures and the building code violations, we can certainly look into that some more. I think the tricky part is that you cannot hold someone criminally liable for being homeless because of the Martin v. Boise case. So we have to navigate that. But we'll certainly do that. But it's a practical application of the Boise case is that, yeah, we want to go out and hit people for things like that of the building and some of the things that they do. So we're navigating that. It's not easy. But thank you for your comments. We'll certainly pick up those efforts.
Absolutely, sir. I appreciate your candor. You're willing to accept this, but this was not just done on your behalf. This was not just your decision. This was a direction that you were given. So I understand that as well. Thank you very much, though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Chief Breezy, thank you for putting this report together. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the time that you took with me to take me out and explain some of the situations that our city's under. The Boise case through the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal has really been the crux of crippling every Western Hemisphere state within the United States that's under their jurisdiction. And, there was a time where people who were mentally ill and homeless were put away in institutions and treated. The state has taken that money away slowly but surely and feel that it's the right of homeless people to live in the community with their mental illness and cause havoc to the rest of society. It's really unfortunate, and it really bothers me because I worked in this field and I saw time that those problems were easily taken care of, and now society is left as a whole to have to endure the illness that these people suffer without treatment. And Chief, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I remember at one point our county, and I don't know if this was some sort of state mandate, had special judges that were appointed to hear homeless cases when our homeless people receive citations fines, if they had misdemeanors, if they had, all these things that they could accumulate from a city for violations that they did within the city, and all they would do was go to this particular assigned judge within our county, and all that stuff was dismissed. So it's really hard, and I don't know what the answer is. I appreciate you indicating that you're working more with the residents now. I hope that we can figure out something to resolve this until there's a better resolution to the homelessness. The Project Room Key has been a good opportunity to get people off the street who are not necessarily seriously mentally ill, but can hold it together and find a job, and hopefully at some point find, other forms of housing. However, the way California is going and the cost of living here, I mean, how can you expect someone who's homeless to find a job and they have no income or have very little income? I had discussed with the chief about possibly moving that encampment a bit further southeast. But, his statement to me is that people on Place Road, the homes that are on Place Road, that complaints were coming in just by the visibleness of the encampment that was behind Home Depot. I know that we have the over by the water tower, we have property there that the state has given us. I would have liked to have seen the encampment there. I understand the school district has a bus stop that's not in front of the Gilbert Apartments, but, several hundred feet away from that. I would hope that we could negotiate with the school district to probably move that bus stop closer to the apartments where the kids get off and go safely into the apartments rather than walking, down the street to the apartments. Because either way, a homeless person can be out there and something can happen between where that bus stop is and where they enter into their apartment complex. And that's, other than that, I don't know of any other city property that we have that's of a large estate where they could be and not so close to the residents. I don't know, maybe we can poll the people on Place Street, and if we can move that encampment and keep it enclosed and not visible, where they can see all the junk and the cars and things like that, make sure that there are no cars inside that encampment, that might be another possibility to relieve the people who are, the residents who are living in the trailer park area. So that's kind of my suggestion on this matter. And I know that's a big effort to have to move that encampment again, but I just, I want people who need to have their rest and peace have rest. Every one of us sitting up here, and including everyone in the audience tonight, I doubt very seriously that we'd raise our hand and say, hey, put the encampment in my backyard. We all have a NIMBYism attitude when it comes to things like that, and feeling danger and feeling unsafe and feeling like we're in danger. So again, I want to thank you for what you've done. That's my recommendation. And I'm only one council member, but until we can find a better alternative, I think maybe moving it further away from where the park is might alleviate some of the problems. And maybe if, we keep it covered, because when they were behind the Home Depot, it was just a cyclone fence and the people on Place Road had visibility. But a little bit further southeast, maybe, from where the encampment is now, might be a good alternative, just to give the residents who are living with the problems that they deal with some relief. So thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just briefly, when we debated the topic of this idea, a few of us on staff sat down and actually looked at the vacant city properties that we owned. That site was a consideration, the bus stop, the zoning of it made us shy away. And the other thing that, well, there's two other things. One of the other primary reasons that it didn't go there was because I mentioned earlier, there's, I think, 147 apartments inside that complex. And every day, every single one of those individuals would be driving by that. And that's not a good solution for it either. I'm not saying this is any better, but that seemed to me to be a much more difficult location because it was going to be in everyone's face who enters and leaves that apartment complex every day. But we can certainly look at that. No problem whatsoever.
Yeah, and on that, you can't see it very well here, but the schematic, the photo that you gave us where the encampment is, I was thinking more like south in the middle so that you're getting it further away from the encampment and putting it down in this area. Now, I know there might be some visibility of Place Road, but it wouldn't be that much, being that the encampment is covered.
Yeah, there's some other issues that we have to deal with. We have to be considerate of when we think about that eastern portion of that property. But I appreciate the comment.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Go ahead.
The problem with putting it close to that rail trail is that there is some kids that walk right along that to get to their housing over there at Gilbert Gonzalez. And so we're asking staff to have a crystal ball to predict how this encampment would have played out. Sounded like a good idea in the beginning, but we just never know, especially with homeless, because I'm sure every one of us have witnessed a homeless individual talking to an invisible person on the street. So how can you reason or use any logic with that? We just don't know. So by saying, let's just move this encampment, spend the money on that to say, hey, this is going to be better just by moving it, is the same thing as what we are in the first place. We just don't know what the outcome is. The best solution, if anything, council, is provide more funding for officers out there. That's the best thing. At least that way it can actually be babysat. Other than that, we're just guessing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right. Thank you, Chief. I just have a few things I wanted to, and appreciate your presentation. That it helps out quite a bit, even with me. I deal with it here in town myself, and I totally understand that, it's an issue that we're all going to deal with. It's not going away by any means, but we do have to fight it every day. And I'm sure, Chief, he puts in many hours trying to come up with the solutions, our ideas to better make things better. There's times that we have to sit up here and, we have to listen to you and we can't speak back. I'm not sure if any of you guys actually see, but on Monday nights and Tuesday nights, I actually drive and sit back there by that fence. It used to have a hole in it. And I used to sit back there 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. So if you see, I'll tell you, a gray F-150 sitting back there, that's me. So I do go back out there. I do watch. I do take pictures. And I know we're going to deal with this issue from here on out, but I do understand Chief's point. I know he's going to fight it every day. I do encourage, please, if something's going on with the resident, call. Make note of it. That way, if something's happened right then, may not be an officer at the time, but we'll get they'll get an officer out there. So, Chief, I appreciate your presentation. I know we're going to keep dealing with this, moving forward. I know there's not an overnight solution for it. So I appreciate it, and I don't have anything else. I wish there was solutions, but I don't have anything else.
Yeah, same here. If I can make just a couple closing comments. Tonight's presentation won't end our partnership with the folks out at that development there. We'll continue to work with them, continue to try and meet with them and have conversations with them how to improve the situation out there. And secondly, I just want to say thank you for your acknowledgement for Sergeant Mendez for Employee of the Month. And thank you for the other two employees as well. But Ivan, bears the brunt of our homeless effort every day, and it is a terribly non-appreciated job, but I know tonight meant a lot to him. Your place out there, council member, by the rail trail, we can move them on Monday, say, you guys, we need to move because we're going to clean up or we're going to do whatever. Tuesday, they're 20 feet down the street or down the trail, and it's a terribly frustrating problem. So I just want to say thank you, because I know it meant a lot to Ivan to have his family. His wife was here and his children were here, even though his son had the complete wrong baseball jersey on. That's okay, I still love him to death, but I just want to say thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, we'll move on to our next item. Thank you, everyone. And it will be advisement of public notices, and there is no report. Our next is 12, our city manager.
No report tonight.
Thank you, sir. Our next report, unfortunately, Mayor Tom Freya is not here tonight, so we'll move on to our city council member reports. And we'll start with Mr. Alamas.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Temp. I appreciate the time. I had a couple of items I wanted to go over. I wanted to get an update on the traffic safety or speed bump policy. Had some members of District 2 asking about that. They have some concerns of speeding in the area, and from what I understand, that policy has not been completed. I know it's been under review for some time, and I was hoping that we could close the circle on that policy so we could let the residents know what what is required of them for them to have consideration of speed bumps in the areas of concern. I would like to know if at some point, whether it be in an open or closed session, if we could have a presentation or a understanding of the city's preparedness level or anything that it needs in regards to critical events, public safety events that may affect the city at large, mass casualty, shooter events, mass casualty events, things like that, so that we have an understanding of where we are in regards to responses to those types of events, and that if we have any shortfalls that maybe we should be addressing. And so hopefully we can address that. Again, however the chief decides to address that, that's fine with me. Second, third is I'm concerned that as we are leaning into fire season, we don't have a fire chief. We don't have an assistant fire chief, and those shortfalls are now affecting our police agency. We now have a commander down at the police department, and we now have potentially other vacancies of senior staff. Again, it seems like there's a pattern here, or I wouldn't say a pattern. There seems to be an exodus and a vacuum here of key personnel. And this affects morale, affects safety, and affects the safety of our residents. So I'm concerned about that. Want to know why it's taking so long to fill those positions. There's been no input, no update to the council as to where we are with that process. And again, public safety is our number one concern here. At least it is mine. Let's see. Again, this homeless situation, again, it's a shame that it had to come to this. A lot of time on this when we could have just been more inclusive from the initiation and allowed the residents of that affected area to participate in that discussion and that decision-making process. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Lamas. Mr. Jones?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Sometimes I get a little disappointed with council here. We want staff to do a lot of projects, a lot of work, but what we do is we pepper them with so many projects they can't get anything existing done before we hammer them with more items. So I would ask council to maybe step back a little bit and not get so much in the trenches of the day-to-day stuff. Keep in mind, we probably put in an average of 2 hours a week when our staff, each individual, usually 40 to sometimes 70 hours a week. So we only get a small piece of the puzzle, and that's really all that we're in this for is policies, procedures, and ordinances. And I would just advise council that it's probably best that we stop backseat driving staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Lewis?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And I have nothing to report. And then we'll move to closed session. A public employee discipline dismissal release pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, parentheses B. I'll check with the city attorney to see if he has any public comments to make before going into closed session.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just wanted to announce for the public that you'll notice that Mayor Faria is not here in person tonight, but he will be attending our closed session telephonically under the criteria of AB 361. If any action is taken tonight in closed session, City Council will come out into open session and report out to the public at the conclusion of the closed session. And at that time, the meeting then will be adjourned. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. And we'll now proceed to closed session. Thank you. We're back from closed session. By a vote of 3 to 2, the City Council has taken action to terminate City Manager Josh Pinero's at-will employment with the city without cause pursuant to his employment agreement with the city. A votes Mayor Faria, Councilmember Lewis, Councilmember Lamas. No votes Councilmember Jones and Councilmember Lambert. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 9:51.